Hey guys, what's up? It's iFlynn here, and today we're going to be taking a look at my Soma and my Soma Prime build. Now, the Soma, it's one of the weapons that I recommend that newer players pick up as soon as they hit Mastery 6 because it teaches them how to build for crit, and it kind of just like, it more or less teaches them like the basis of modding. So this is going to be like a modding tutorial within a Soma video type of thing. So, let's just break this down and make it as easy as possible. On this build, I have 5 formas, and for all the newer players out there, I read a comment yesterday, and they were like, well, whenever I'm watching a build video, I need to know how much forma there is on the build, and, you know, why the polarities are there, and stuff like that, or what polarities I need. To basically find out how much forma is on a weapon, all you have to do is look up here at this little symbol here, like this little star, and then see the number. And that basically tells you how much forma there is. And then all you have to do is, like, you know, copy the polarity. So on this build, we have 5 V polarities and then 2 dash polarities. Now we have the V polarities because we're going to be using our main damage mods and our crit mods on these V polarities. And then these 2 dashes are here for our elementals because those mods take up like a big amount of our capacity, right? So we want to minimize how much capacity like a mod like heavy caliber would take up because it at max rank is 16 capacity, so we want to half that, so then it goes down to 8. So you know that's basically how that goes. But to start off, we're going to be going with our main damage mods, heavy caliber being one of them. And what I do is I like to keep my modding section very neat and tidy. So what we're going to be doing is throwing on Serration as well as Split Chamber. So let's just go ahead and type that in. There we go. And these are our 3 main damage mods, and I usually have these in the bottom left, bottom right, or, you know, whatever corner of my modding section, so all 3 of them are together. And then we throw on our crit mods, right? So once you have your 3 main damage mods on, you want to be modding towards like the weapon strengths, if that makes any sense. So let's say if it's a status weapon, you want to be throwing on your dual stat elemental mods. If it's a crit weapon, you throw on your crit mods. So basically stuff like that. So next up, we're going to throw on Point Strike, and we're going to throw on Vital Sense. Now, Vital Sense will be all the way at the back here. Can't actually find my maxed out one. Okay, let's just go ahead and type it in instead of... There it is. Okay, here we go. So Vital Sense is on now. And now you'll notice that we have 3 slots left. So the next thing we want to do is add on more damage. So to add on more damage, the best way to do that is basically just throwing on your elementals. And the reason that we do this is because what's going to happen with your elementals is they are going to take a percentage, usually 90% if you're using the 90% elemental mods like Cryo Rounds, Hellfire, Infected Clip, or Stormbringer. It'll take 90% of your total damage and then convert that into your elemental damage, and then that elemental damage will be added on top of your Impact, Puncture, and Slash. So you add Impact, Puncture, Slash together, that's your total damage, and then you throw on your elements after the fact, and then you get even more damage, and then you add those on, and then that's your total damage output of the weapon. So we throw on Infected Clip, we get an extra 87.2 damage. So just like ignore the different damage types and then just look at all those numbers, add those together, and then that's your total output of damage in a you know, best case scenario, I guess you could say. So throw on Stormbringer, and then you have an extra thing right there, and then we have 174.4 corrosive damage. Now, another thing to keep in mind is the fact that where you place your elemental mods matters a lot. At this point, we could throw on like some weird mod, like let's say for example Shred to speed up our fire rate. It's actually very useful, at least in my opinion. But usually for newer players, what you want to be doing is you want to be throwing on a 3rd element, right? But what happens is they would look at this and they'd be like, okay, well, this is what's going to get me my corrosive damage, and then they'd throw on like Hellfire in the middle here, and this would completely mess up their elemental combo. And the reason for that being is the fact that your modding section actually has an order, and it goes from top left to bottom right. So right here, this is slot number 1, this is slot 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you have to make sure that whenever you're throwing elementals onto your weapon, that you're putting the elemental mods, which you want to throw together to make like an elemental combo such as corrosive, beside one another in the modding section. So if we throw Hellfire on here beside Infected Clip, we're going to make gas and electric damage. But if we change Stormbringer and Hellfire around, we actually make corrosive and heat damage, which is more beneficial for the enemy that we're going to be going up against. And in this case, it's going to be a level 150 heavy gunner. So just to kind of demonstrate, or explain rather, Infected Clip and Stormbringer gives you your corrosive damage, which is going to give you 75% extra damage versus the heavy gunner. On top of that, you also have Hellfire on there, giving you that fire damage, which is going to give you an extra 25% damage versus the heavy gunner as well. Obviously, that will be your base number of damage will be calculated based on the resistances that the heavy gunner has. So let's say I believe he has like a resistance to impact damage because he's got ferrite armor on. So it's going to deduct like a certain percentage of your impact damage off your total damage whenever you shoot a bullet at that enemy, if that makes any sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump in and we're going to kill a level 150 heavy gunner with this build, just so we can see kind of like the most basic, because all of these mods that I'm showing you right now are obtainable in the game as we speak and should be like in the very far future. So this is like just like a very standard build for newer players, and then we'll jump into like other things that you can throw on as well. But this is just a very simple basic build. Now what I will say is headshots really matter whenever it comes to weapons that are high in crit. So we're going to be going for nothing but headshots, and you want to be very up close and personal with the enemy, especially if you're using something like heavy caliber, because that's going to split your bullets up basically whenever you're firing them, right? So this is definitely a build intended for get straight up in the enemy's face, burst them down with a load of bullets, and then, you know, kill them and then move on to the next enemy type of build. So let's just go ahead and make ourselves invincible, simulate the enemy here, and then we're going to jump in his face and we're going to shoot him in the head with the Soma, and basically see how long it takes us to kill him. So make sure that you are getting those headshots, otherwise it will take a very long time to basically kill the guy, right? So this is him basically dead now, and it took a very long time to kill him. That's because he has armor on, of course, which makes sense because armor will reduce the total amount of damage you're dealing, because obviously the resistances and stuff like that they have, that and armor scaling is a thing. So it's just going to basically take away from your damage in general. So the build that I'm just after showing you, that's like a best case scenario build that you're going to use whenever you know, basically the enemy's resistances is more or less stripped away, right? So this is going to give you the highest number of damage possible whenever, like, per bullet, if that makes any sense. So that's going to give you the highest numbers, but it may be beneficial as a newer player or someone who likes to play solo or in groups a lot to be running status, okay? Now, status is basically just the mods that give you your elemental damage, 60% of it, plus 60% status chance, right? So Malignant Force, that's a mod, High Voltage, etc. These are mods that will give you status chance, and basically all you have to do to make a build like this is just go ahead and throw on your mods like so, and then potentially you could double up in corrosive damage here, just so you're dealing more of the more beneficial damage type, if that makes any sense. And what's going to happen here is the enemy's armor is going to be stripped away more frequently whenever it comes to you know, per bullet sort of thing. So you may kill him just a little bit faster. You'll notice that we're dealing lower numbers of damage, but the enemy's dying a lot quicker because we're stripping his armor away, and then those numbers sort of start to build up. So if the enemy has armor or resistances of any form, it may be more beneficial to go with a status build. But if you're stripping the enemy's armor away with the likes of like the aura mod called corrosive projection, which you can throw on your warframes, and aura mods work on like a per team basis. So if 4 people have corrosive projection on, which is basically like reduces 30% of the enemy's armor, effectively completely removing it if 4 people have it, then it's more beneficial to go with the 90% elemental mod. So status is pretty good whenever the enemy has armor and you want to strip it away. But if you're in a best case scenario where the enemy's resistances are gone, go with those 90% elemental damage mods, and then that would be, you know, it's going to give you more damage in that case. Now, that's not the only way to sort of build the Soma, and we're going to go back to our 90% damage mods here, and then I'm just going to sort of explain this in a way which is easy for you guys to understand. We have basically everything that we need on this build to effectively kill an enemy with the Soma, but we have 1 slot left, and this opens up like a bunch of different options that we can throw on here. So for example, I mentioned beforehand, we have Prime Shred. Granted, we will have to swap a few things around, so we'd have to put Point Strike over here, and we'd have to put Prime Shred on the Polarized slot. You know, Prime Shred is definitely a viable option, or even regular Shred if you don't have Prime Shred. Basically, what this does is it allows you to shoot through walls. So if we go ahead, simulate this enemy right here, and we go here, and we say he's about in here, maybe if we get him a little bit closer, line it up a little bit, you are able to shoot through walls. Granted, they have to be relatively close, or it has to be like a thinner surface. You're able to shoot through walls and kill an enemy that way. So it's a pretty cool mod. That, and it increases your fire rate. So if you are just shooting at the enemy, you're going to be like dealing high amounts of damage, and you're going to be stripping their armor away, of course, because you have a decent status chance. It's like 10%. That and you're firing so fast that, I mean, the enemy's armor is just going to be stripped away. And then your DPS, because you're firing faster, is going to be way higher. So let's just go ahead and shoot this guy with just Prime Shred equipped. Not free a wall or anything. Make sure to be hitting the headshots, like so. And then this guy's going to drop dead. There you go. So we had 18 bullets left in the magazine. Keep in mind, this guy is level 150, so it will take a while to kill him. But, you know, it's whatever. Next up, we have a different mod, and this is Prime Beam mods. Now, Prime Beam mods are definitely made for endgame players, and basically how this mod works is it acts as like a multiplier for your damage. So, like, depending on the faction you're going up against, if you have the correct Corrupted mod on, it's going to act as like a multiplicative increase to your damage, right? So in our case, we're going up against the faction known as the Corrupted, because they're one of the most threatening factions in the game, because they have so many different enemies within the faction. We're going to throw on Prime Beam of Corrupted because it just makes sense, and it's going to make us deal more damage. We're not going to have the fire rate of Prime Shred anymore, but you are going to notice that we are dealing considerably bigger numbers whenever it comes to just shooting at this guy, hitting our headshots and stuff like that, and he's going to die relatively quickly. So we start off with like 773, and then as obviously his armor gets stripped away, we keep on getting bigger and bigger numbers, and then we kill him a lot quicker. So we have 86 bullets left in our magazine there, and it just kind of comes down to the fact that the numbers were a lot bigger because we did have that Prime Beam mod on, which made a lot of sense. Now, again, we're not just limited to Prime Beam mods. It's not the only option you have. There is another one called Bladed Rounds, and basically what Bladed Rounds does is you get 120% extra crit damage while aiming for 9 seconds whenever you kill an enemy. So what we're going to do is we're going to spawn in a bunch of Butchers, as well as our Mr. Heavy Gunner over here. And we're going to kill them first, and then we're going to be killing our Heavy Gunner. Now these guys are going to die considerably faster because they have a lot less armor. We're just going to go ahead and kill them, aim down sights, and then shoot at our Heavy Gunner right here. And you can see the damage that we're dealing. So let's just go ahead and kill more Butchers here, like so. And reload our Soma. We have a 3-second reload, so of course we have to, you know, take that into consideration. But you can see the type of numbers you're dealing. They're kind of similar to that of the Prime Beam mod. Once you are obviously aiming down sights and you have that kill and you have that extra 120% crit damage, it's definitely a beneficial mod to have, at least in my opinion. So let's just go ahead and give like maybe try that again. Spawn in one Butcher beside the guy and see like the numbers. Here we go. Simulate. We jump down here. Kill this guy. Get to this guy's head, like so. So let's see. Oh, need to reload. Whoopsies. A few seconds left on it, and now the buff's gone. But you can see that we've ate away like a decent amount of his health, and now we're back to just dealing like normal damage. So let's just go ahead and kill this guy. We're getting like 2,400 damage there, which was pretty cool. You know, it's pretty good. So Bladed Rounds is definitely beneficial. It's just the fact that you have to kind of constantly keep the Bladed Rounds buff up and kill an enemy and stuff like that. That's the kind of downside to it, but it does give you somewhat similar damage to using a Prime Beam mod, right? So it's pretty good. Moving on though, we have Argon Scope. If I can find it, let's just go ahead and type it in. Argon Scope, and this is going to give you more crit chance whenever you get a headshot, which will give you a better sustained DPS, I guess, because you're going to notice the fact that you're hitting higher numbers more consistently because you're going to be constantly going for that headshot, so it makes sense. But Bladed Rounds gives you higher burst DPS, so depending on the type of player you are will determine which type of build you want to go for. You can see that we're kind of like just like eating away at this guy's health. We're getting orange crit territory as well. That's cool and everything, but I mean, your Prime Beam mod, we still killed a lot faster with the Prime Beam mod. That time we had about 40 bullets left in the magazine. With the Prime Beam mod, we had about 86 left in the magazine. So, you know, it's kind of down to you. Argon Scope and Bladed Rounds, they came from a event which was around the Acolytes, so the Stalker's Acolytes. But now we're going to go ahead and we're going to test out a set mod called Hunter Munitions, and I'm going to swap out Argon Scope for Hunter Munitions and kind of just see how this goes. And basically what this does is you have a plus 30% chance to apply slash status to an enemy on crit hit. So every time you get a crit, there's a 30% chance that you're going to apply the slash status effect to an enemy. It's a pretty good mod. You know, you can use it on shotguns as well. So let's just go ahead and test it out and see how well it does versus this guy, because I actually haven't used this before. But basically what's going to happen is those slash procs are going to eat away at the enemy's health as you're kind of shooting at him and stripping his armor away and stuff like that, and he's going to die relatively quickly. And yeah, you can actually like use that there as a replacement for Bane mods, because we had about 80 bullets left in the magazine there whenever the guy actually dropped dead. Now you could like shoot at that guy and then leave him to bleed for a second, and then he could die like that. That's totally a thing. But you know, I just think that you know, you have a bunch of options whenever it comes to modding the Soma, and yeah, it's it's useful. It's a good idea to just kind of jump into the simulacrum and try them all out, and see which kind of works the best for you. But realistically, like, once you have sort of this loadout or this layout, you can throw on this slot right here anything you want to throw on, and then that's basically you done and dusted, and the Soma will, you know, be very effective. Like, there's no content in the game that you realistically will be playing that will have like level 150 enemies apart from maybe sorties, but even at that, the enemies are within the 80 to 100 bracket, and even at that point, like, those 50 levels that the enemies have within the simulacrum, that's a big increase to their effective HP. So, you know, you don't necessarily have to copy the builds that I showed, but you can if you so choose to, and they will be super beneficial. Like, if you really fucking wanted to, you could throw on Prime Fast Hands here and, you know, call it a day if you really want to. But, you know, you can basically throw anything on. Wouldn't recommend Fang Fusillade. Fang Fusillade wouldn't be good in the Soma because of the way that the IPS is sort of split up here. Like, not enough of the damage is within slash damage for this to be beneficial. But, you know, there's a bunch of stuff you could do. Wouldn't recommend Val Acceleration either. But yeah, that's pretty much it whenever it comes to the Soma. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What type of build would you run? Help some other players out, stuff like that. You know, would you just maybe throw on just like Malignant Force here to stack up on some corrosive damage, get yourself more status chance, have those 90% mods? That's totally a viable thing as well, if you want to go ahead and test that out. Simulate this guy again. Go ahead, shoot his head a little bit. You could even take off, if you really wanted to, like, you could take off heavy caliber and replace that for something different. Now, we killed that guy super quick there. We have 111 bullets left. That's pretty cool. You know, but you could take off heavy caliber. So we could throw on, like, let's say Prime Bean and then throw in Hunter Munitions, maybe. That might be cool. Let's say we want to, like, get those consistent headshots. Go for this. You know, this is definitely a viable strat as well. Of course, you'd have to, like, have a way to keep the enemy crowd controlled. There you go. We kill him super quick as well. So there's a bunch of different things you could do to sort of kill the guys, but you have to make sure that it suits your playstyle, because that's all that it comes down to. Like, this here type of build here, this would work insane on, like, Haro or something, because you're able to keep the enemies still. Just kind of go for that headshot, if that makes any sense. So let's just go ahead and, you know, do the thing right here. Like so, and you can go for that headshot all day, every day. Get those crit numbers up, and then have, obviously, the status kick in. You have his armor being stripped and stuff like that, and then you have, you know, your slash procs coming into play, all that different stuff. And then, like, even take into consideration, like, the DPS you could churn out with the fact that, you know, Haro's abilities allow him to, you know, basically just, like, up his fire rate and stuff. So if we go ahead, put this guy still, use Haro's ability, and then just lay into this guy's head. Look how fast the fire rate is, and look how quick that guy died there. So, you know, there's a bunch of different stuff you could do. You could even use Haro's 4 to give yourself more crit chance. And, you know, obviously we're just talking about Haro here, but there's a bunch of other frames in the game which will buff up your DPS whenever it comes to the Soma. So there's a bunch of different things that you could, you know, you could do to kill enemies more efficiently, right? So here we go. Gonna get all that crit chance and basically melt this guy. So we're gonna go ahead, stun him now, user 2, and then this guy's gonna drop dead in no time. So pretty insane. Like, the Soma's a really good weapon, and implying you use it right, implying you build it around your play style, then you know, it'll be beneficial and be super cool. So anyway, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. If you enjoyed it, go ahead, hit that like button below. If you want to see more Warframe content from me, hit subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.